The mining industry emerged from the pandemic period of 2021 with about 12% growth, and that's according to data released during the annual Mining Indaba 2022 summit, which was held last week. In the meantime, the South Africa's central bank, or Reserve Bank, is holding its monetary policy meeting on Thursday this week with expectations of a rate hike. But how much? Joining me to discuss these latest headlines from Cape Town is the executive chairman of Impact Investment Africa, Chris Hart. Good evening to you, Chris. Thanks for making it through from Cape Town. We appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. What were the key points for you from last week's Mining Indaba summit?
Well, I think the summit itself is interesting because South Africa, it's one of the showcases for the South African mining industry, but also it helps to showcase the African mining industry. And my sense is that mining companies from outside South Africa were actually faring very well. It was quite upbeat for that sector. The sector as a whole is also relatively upbeat because the profitability is quite strong at the moment. So it's not, we're rising on an upwards cycle at the moment. The commodity cycle is always quite cyclical, but it is an upward cycle. So mines are enjoying good profits at the moment, especially with the weaker rand and weaker emerging market currencies as well. That's helping to boost profits because it's in Africa it's a hard currency earnings with soft currency costs. But I think infrastructure issues like load shedding is really hitting the mines hard because very often the Eskom goes to the high-end users like mines and smelters and that to ask them to cut back before they start with the load shedding. And it's actually very hard on the sector because it really does impact productivity and pushes costs with the mining infrastructure, with the electricity infrastructure under strain. But we're also finding that the other infrastructure like rail is also in dire straits, which of course the mining industry depends on quite a bit. And then you've also got port congestion and infrastructure constraints there. So to a large extent, South Africa is enjoying high profitability, and we saw that with the growth of the mining industry. It's really cyclical growth, it's not structural growth, because infrastructure is a big constraint in actually taking structural growth of the mines. So really it's mines just fulfilling the additional capacity that they've got rather than new mining operations coming through.
Interesting, despite all the problems of the lockdown, the various levels of lockdown that you folks had in South Africa last year, the industry grew almost 12%. What's your outlook on 2022, considering the current global and domestic circumstances?
Well, last year it did grow because of the huge effect that the lockdown had on the previous year. The previous year was the biggest effect of the lockdown, so you had a lot of growth in the industry off you could say, the previous year's low base. The big problem is that the South African mining industry is struggling to attract both capital, offshore capital, but also expertise. And that's because of local domestic policies that have really made South African mining industry difficult to invest in from a point of view of outsiders, particularly because of strong transformation and BEE laws, which is really due to it's a bit of a facade and an excuse to actually give the local ruling party priority access to mining opportunities, which is why it's created a lot of uncertainty and a lot of sub-investments. It really has damaged the investability of the industry, which really went ex-growth already in 2001 because of this. So we've gone through, this is the second commodity boom that we're actually going through in the last 2 decades, and South Africa is not really well placed to take advantage of these commodity booms.
I'm trying to find out what the factors were behind South Africa's mining sector falling into the bottom 10 of the Fraser Institute Investment Attractiveness Index ranking. South Africa to be number one when you talk about mining in Africa. South Africa used to be the destination. Now, SA is now number 10.
Yeah, so basically this has been a steady decline. It hasn't just come overnight. It's just that it's been declining over the years. And as it's been declining, we've sunk to the bottom. And that's that Fraser Mining Institute is quite an important, influential survey because it does indicate, from the capital centres of London, Singapore, New York, where to actually look for opportunities. And unfortunately, South African mining assets in even the majors' books have become orphan assets. It doesn't matter how good they seem to be, they are offloading their assets in South Africa, and that includes companies like Anglo Gold that are ridding themselves of South African assets, even though it's a South African gold mining house. And of course, with the climate change imposition on the mining industry, it means that big sectors like the coal sector is also experiencing stagnation, which is also helping to contribute to load shedding in some way, because it is part of the supply chain into Eskom, an important part of that supply chain.
Okay, let's quickly, Chris, let's talk quickly about the South Africa's Reserve Bank, the central bank's monetary policy meeting is on Thursday. Expectations is that the SARB will raise interest rates. What's your outlook?
Well, basically, the Reserve Bank really has a very odious task. They're facing a rising inflation. They have to respond to it, but they do have a semi-dual mandate. I know they get cross when you say they've got a dual mandate, but they do have growth as a consideration. And with unemployment rising and at record highs, and the economy stagnant, it's actually very difficult for them to actually raise rates very fast. They are already behind the curve as far as inflation is concerned, so they would want to catch up with that. But they're mindful of the growth and the dire position the economy finds itself in. So my feeling, they'll go for another 0.25% interest rate hike. They're going to try and do that consistently at each meeting. I don't think they're going to try and accelerate the rate hikes just simply because of the dire state that the economy finds itself in right now. At this point, I think unemployment is at a level that actually is dangerously destabilizing at an unusual level, and it's very difficult to actually throttle the economy further with much higher interest rates at this stage.
Chris Hart, Executive Chairman at Impact Investment Africa. Thank you so much for your time tonight, and have a pleasant evening down there in Cape Town. See you next time.